HI 101. Welcome to Study Session 8, Philosophy and National Development. Introduction. In this study session, we will attempt to take the argument that philosophy is also significant for the national development of any state. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this session, you should be able to 1. Describe the relationship that exists between the philosophical enterprise and the politics of governing a state. 2. Explain what national development entails. 3. Explain at least one of the conditions necessary for laying the foundation of social life. And 4. Discuss the significance of philosophy to national development. Relationship between philosophical enterprise and politics of governing a state. Plato, one of the important Greek philosophers, once argued that until philosophers become kings or kings become philosophers, we can never witness peace and development in a state. Why did he make this statement? The most important reason is to draw attention to the fundamental role that philosophy and philosophers can play in the national development of any nation. Philosophy is usually regarded, especially in the consideration of prospective future, as one of the most useless courses one can offer in the university. In this regard, it will be extremely difficult to see how such a course can contribute to the development of a country where you have science, agriculture, law, medicine, engineering, economics, accountancy, business administration, and even political science or sociology. Thus, if it is difficult for philosophy to put bread on my table, how can it help in moving a nation forward? We made two important points in the first study session. The first point is that so many people have so many wrong ideas about what philosophy is and what philosophers do. Many people consider philosophy to be a godless enterprise and philosophers as people who don't believe anything, even the existence of God. Some others believe that philosophers are those who have nothing better to do than to argue and argue about pointless issues with no relevance. The second point we made is that philosophy is inescapable and inevitable in human existence. In this study session, we will begin to understand how inescapable philosophy can also be in the national life of a state. According to Olusegun Oladipo, the philosophical mansion is not simply a house of words, which guarantees its occupants an opportunity for a permanent possibility of conversation. Rather, it is a theoretical observatory which provides a vantage position from which to have a clearer, even deeper view of the human condition. How does philosophy enhance our view of the human condition? Richard Rorty, the American philosopher, understands the meaning and function of philosophy not really as consisting in the capacity to know things as they really are, but to penetrate behind appearance to reality, which for him leads to some of the numerous philosophical problems we have today, that is, appearance and reality, mind and matter, etc. Rather, Rorty argues that philosophy is a quest not for knowledge as an end in itself, but a knowledge as a means towards greater human happiness, a genuine human capacity which enhances our ability to trust and to cooperate with other people, and in particular to work together so as to improve the future. The question of how best to organize the human society in such a way that people can live the good life is one of the basic problems of political philosophy. It is also one of the most critical problems that plural societies face today in a world that is becoming more global and more complex. A plural state is any state in which the people are deeply divided along religious, linguistic, ethnic, and cultural lines. Nigeria, for example, is multilinguistic. That is, there are more than 600 languages. Multi-ethnic, that is, there are equally the same number of ethnic groups. And multi-religious, that is, there are at least more than 3 religious affiliations. Thus, one of the important functions of philosophy for Oladipo and Roti is how that universal capacity human beings have to philosophize can assist us, first, in improving our sense of human solidarity, and second, in helping us to craft the social hope that will enhance our sense of living together in spite of our religious, cultural, linguistic, and ethnic differences. Contributions of philosophy to national development. The first contribution of philosophy to national development, therefore, comes from its function as a means to self-understanding, the definition or redefinition of who a people are and what they can be. To understand this function of philosophy, we need to first consider the Nigerian post-independence predicament. Nigeria got her independence from Britain in 1960. After 50 years of independence, most of us as Nigerians are convinced that there is something radically wrong with this country. For one, we know that unlike some other countries which gained independence around the same time, that is, Ghana and South Africa, much more later, Nigeria has failed to utilize the immense human and material resources at our disposal to make giant strides that will adequately qualify her as the true giant of Africa. As a result of this, electricity has been epileptic. The roads are death traps. Infrastructures are terrible. The healthcare system is dilapidated. And education only produces half-baked human capital. Generally, governance is not affecting the mass of Nigerians. Most of us will also agree that the problem with Nigeria is the problem of leadership. From 1960 to 2010, the Nigerian state has had to deal with one bad leader after the other. For Professor Oladipo, the critical problem arises from the Nigerian orientation which predisposes us to constantly battling with superficial national issues at the expense of the fundamental ones. For instance, most of us have at one time or the other read in the newspaper about issues like prostitution, same-sex marriages, rotational presidency, religious identities and problems, the health of the president, tenure for public office holders, and so on. These issues, though important, can be compared with such other fundamental issues like that of social justice in Niger Delta, social order, an appropriate value system for a developing country, poverty and the issue of wealth creation and distribution, unity in diversity, realizing the common good, and such other fundamentals. Foundation of social life. We can therefore begin to read the trouble with Nigeria as really that of our lack of the foundations for social life, which serve as the basis for a composite, all-round development of any country. What are the foundations of social life? These foundations refer to those conditions that human beings require to live a conducive life in the society in which they find themselves. These conditions are basically three. A. The adaptation to external human and physical environment. B. Provision of human biosocial needs. And C. The establishment of the requirements necessary for social cooperation. The first condition requires that human beings adjust to whatever physical environment they find themselves in order to ensure their own survival. Such an interaction with the environment would involve the people achieving shelter, clothing, and feeding. For example, an environment dominated by mountains, that is Panama, or ice, that is Iceland, or thick forest, that is the Amazon, or oceans, that is Japan, or sand, that is Saudi Arabia. Apart from this, there is also the complementary need to adjust to the human environment. This requires that the individuals in a particular society be protected through adequate care and support, especially for those who are weak and vulnerable, like the aged, the sick, and the young ones. The second condition for a conducive social life involves the provisions of such biosocial needs at three levels. The first level includes the need for food, clothing, and housing. The second level includes cultural needs, like the need for social and cultural identity, that is, the idea of who and what we are. The third level of needs include the physical needs, like the need for self-dignity, sexual expression, and so on. Finally, the last condition for social life has to do with the orderly coordination of the affairs of society in such a way as to make social cooperation possible. Oladipo therefore concludes that from all we have said above, it should be clear that human survival and human flourishing in contemporary times clearly require science and technology as means of understanding, controlling, and transforming nature. However, it is also clear that the goal of social sustenance and progress cannot be pursued in any significant manner without securing some basic element of social organization, particularly social institutions and the values that sustains them. This point is very important because of our popular feeling that in all the disciplines we can only reckon with the sciences, the technologies, and perhaps the management to the exclusion of the humanities and the social sciences. This biased thinking is also myopically captured in the formulation of the Nigerian national policy on education, which gives a larger funding ratio to the sciences over the humanities. This is because the humanities are considered to be utterly useless, not only to an individual's future prospect, but also a country's national development. From the above, it would be very difficult to build a society on science and technology where there is a collapse of social values and institutions. These two are significant because social institutions, consisting of political institutions, economic institutions, cultural institutions, and kinship institutions, help human beings in building and cementing their social lives. These institutions, on their part, are held together by certain values which inform their functions. Values refer to the estimated worth of something, the principle or standard which guides a group or an individual, or the ideas which represent the fundamental and/or purpose of an individual or group pursues. This could include the value of trust, honesty, reciprocity, tolerance, compassion, and so on. It should not be difficult for you as a Nigerian to see that these values are lacking in the Nigerian society. It is also not difficult for us to know that the social institutions in Nigeria are collapsing. To be sure, just think of the educational system from the primary to the tertiary level. You also need to think of the attitude of government workers and ordinary citizens like you and me to government work. What happens if you get an employment in the local government? Will you not be jealous? Thus, again, for Oladipo, when we talk of national development, our focus should be on the extent to which the institutions of a given society enhance the capacity of the people as individuals and as a social collective to secure the condition for the persistence of social life. And in order to enhance such national development, the capacity for citizens to realize social happiness, it becomes important to think about freedom and decency as two important variables in national development. Freedom refers to the presence of those conditions in the society which enhances an individual's ability to realize their goals in life, as well as the provision of adequate security to enjoy these conditions. When you are living in a society and there are no constraints to your self-realization as an individual or as a group, then we can say you are free. If you consistently find it difficult to become the kind of person you want to be in life because of certain difficulties made possible by the social agreement in a country, then we can't say you are actually free. This therefore implies that for you to be really free, there must be some level of social efficiency that ensure that certain things can be taken for granted in the society. We should be able to assume that our transportation will work efficiently, that electricity will be available, that ATM machines will not commit electronic robbery, that we can complete our education at the stipulated time, that we can achieve a genuine health care at a reasonable cost, that phones will work, and so on. Freedom also entails that there won't be any reason for any individual to depend on others for survival because of economic or political deprivation. For instance, the situation of workers in Nigeria today, even those working in the universities, is that they have been reduced to an existence of perpetual expectations of arrears and loans. In other words, once there are no arrears owed them by the government or loans from cooperative societies, then workers can really fashion a project for themselves and on their salaries alone. In this sense, we can't really say they are free. They are captives of the economic and political situation of the country. Decency is also another variable for measuring national development. This has to do with the behaviors or attitudes of the people in a society, which conform to the acceptable and unacceptable standard of what is right, what is modest, what is civil, what is wholesome, what is identifying, and what is respectable. It refers to the level to which these values, which enhance social cooperation, are fully entrenched in any society. For instance, imagine you are driving on a lonely road and saw a stranger flagging you at a distance. What is likely to be your reaction? You speed away, of course. Why will you speed away? Well, for one, you don't know the person, and secondly, you don't trust him or her not to be harmful. Thus, the absence of trust in our society is one of the problems that makes social organization of our society inefficient. In this respect, Nigeria is a normless society, a society defined by a lack of acceptable norms or values by which we can direct the way we think and perceive events around us. Significance of philosophy to national development. In study session 1 and 2, we argue that philosophy is a reflective and critical thinking about life and existence. In this regard, Kwasi Weridu comments that the function of philosophy everywhere is to examine the intellectual foundations of life using the best available modes of knowledge and reflection for human well-being. What we have done in the preceding 2 or 3 pages is examining the foundation on which a decent and free society can be erected to facilitate and enabling national development. In this sense, according to Socrates, an unexamined life is not worth living. Yet, the function of philosophy goes beyond social criticism of those conditions that will ensure the well-being of the people. It is also the task of philosophy to stimulate reflective and critical thinking about the concept of principles which we use to organize our experience in morals, religion, in social and political life, in law, in history, and the national sciences. The existence of philosophic spirit therefore becomes a crucial necessity in any national development. The philosophic spirit refers to the human capacity to critically and reflectively challenge the structure of existence, of knowledge and of ideas, and ideas in order to determine their tenability for coping with life. This spirit therefore ensures that citizens are always ready to examine and challenge the basis of national existence. This is because the philosophic spirit is an orientation which requires that we always ask for the justification of whatever is considered to be valid or right or good. The philosophic spirit will ensure that we no longer pass the responsibility for our failure, either as a nation or as individual, to God or the devil. The philosophic spirit also ensures that we take the full responsibility for our self-actualization as individuals and as a state. This will help the society in the long run to pay attention to the fundamental issues rather than the superficial ones in the economy, in public administration, in politics, and in culture. And further, the society can also begin from this critical and reflective foundation to begin the task of reconstructing those ideas and institutions that can serve as adequate guard for organizing the society. It is in these crucial senses that philosophy can serve as a critical elixir that can help in the attempt to bring the Nigerian society back to life, and furthermore, to reactivate the lives of the individual as a compass in understanding life and its ups and downs. Study session summary. In this study session, we argue that philosophy is not only significant to the improvement of the lives of the individuals, as we have tried to demonstrate in the preceding study session, but also in the advancement of national existence. We noted that while scientific and technological advancements are crucial to the development of any country, no country can neglect the development of its social institutions, as well as the values which strengthen them. We concluded that philosophy is a critical and reflective endeavor which ensures that our ideas, principles, institutions, and social arrangements are subjected to serious rational challenge in order to prove their plausibility, as well as ensure the reconstruction of the basis on which social life can be reconstructed for good living. It is this philosophic spirit that philosophy contributes to the idea of national development. We have come to the end of study session 8. Thanks for listening.